shape of Isaac at this point in time? What's his status? What's going on with Isaac? He's blind. Isaac is not when we introduce the story. Eventually, that's where he becomes. Yes. What else do we know about Isaac as we're introducing the story? Okay, so we're kind of introduced to this. He's I guess at the point where Abraham is looking for him to have a wife. They are childless, and they're praying to God that situation may change. Good. So we see Abraham. What's the family situation with Abraham and Isaac? Okay, so at the end of the story, we see that that Sarah has died, and he's mourning over that. And we'll talk a little bit about that situation, even with Rebekah. What's their socioeconomic status? Very wealthy. Does that change with Isaac and Rebekah? No. He inherits it all. Okay, yes. Does it change any? Is it the same old, same old? I think he becomes even wealthier, doesn't he? And he has some trouble with the places that he settles when he goes to the land of Philistines and whatnot. We don't really look at that in the record with Rebekah so much, but that's what goes on with their family. But Abraham is a very wealthy individual, and what does he want for his son? Not a local girl. And so they travel back to Haran to his local family and to seek out a wife for him. So what are then some of the characteristics as we think about who was it that went to Haran to get a wife? Abraham's servant. So Abraham's servant goes back to the homeland to find a wife. And so we have this meeting between Abraham's servant and Rebekah. And so we're asking, I guess, just in general, what are some characteristics? I think this could be her entire life. This question would be, what are some general qualities or characteristics or information? What do we know about her as it relates to her life and what we know about her? So she's a beautiful woman. Somebody might add that if it's not up there. We've got hospitable. She's a hard worker. She's faithful. She's helpful. Other characteristics? Not just in this meeting with Abraham's servant, but her entire life as well. Okay, she was caring for the animals, so she saw that as something that was important. Good. She had a sister. What does that tell us about? What characteristic does that tell us about? Okay, so there's a family unit, so she's the sister of Laban, right? Okay. What else? She's willing, kind. Supersede the earth, right? Okay. All right. Yeah, that's a characteristic. So what characteristic would you say that is? Okay. Faithful. We'll talk about that as we get to it. Other thoughts there? Okay, so she's from the same family. Good. Okay. She was deceitful. She deceived who? She was protected, okay? She took on that protection too, right? So as we said, we see this detailed description with Abraham's servant, but later on we have this episode where Isaac, what does Isaac do? The same thing that his dad had done before. He lies about his wife or his sister, right? And then we learn that Isaac becomes even more wealthy, right? He becomes more wealthy than the inhabitants there in the area of the Philistines. And, there's some conflict that goes on, right? They dig some wells and the inhabitants fill those wells in. And so I've answered my own question. There's this conflict, right? And so does wealth necessarily necessitate that there's never going to be any conflict, any pains, any difficulties, any challenges in life? No. So what kind of characteristics would we see out of Rebekah based on some of the life challenges that she's involved in? Okay, right? Okay, so y'all are jumping back again. We've kind of covered that. We'll get, okay, move forward then.
In the house doing her job, so he doesn't have to worry about anything else. He can deal with the problem.
Okay. Yeah, we don't get a lot of details about Rebekah in those situations. Even when she's taken into the house of Abimelech, we don't get a lot of details about that. We just kind of see that Abimelech is not happy with Isaac in particular. And I wonder what that challenge would have been like for her to live in that situation. Seems like that was maybe some duration of time. But it does seem like that Isaac is either visiting her or being around her or whatever. And so that would have been kind of challenging for her as well. Okay, so any other characteristics that you want to bring out, and then we'll yeah, right. Yeah, she was definitely willing. Would you say maybe she was adventurous? I mean, you imagine yourself being, 20 years old. I don't know exactly how old she would have been. Somebody comes and says, hey, we're going to move all the way across the country. I mean, she takes an entourage with her, right? Who does she take with her? Her nurse. And what else do we learn that she also takes with her? There would also been women that would have went with this. I think the nurses specifically mentioned, but there was women that went with her too. So it's not like that she just goes completely by herself. I think somebody mentioned that she was protected. I think that her nurse and the other women that went on the trip with her would have protected her as well. And so it's not like she's just going to the other side of the country all by herself. But in a lot of ways, I mean, she's starting anew, right? She's starting fresh. Does she know Isaac? No, she doesn't know him, right? Does she know Abraham's servant? No, she doesn't know him, right? But she is adventurous, and she says, I'm up for this. I'm game. Let's see what this brings about. And so I think we see those kind of characteristics in her. So we talked about her being hospitable. We talked about this idea of being a hard worker, especially in this event related to Abraham's servant. What does she do that shows she's a hard worker that we've already mentioned? She waters the camels, right? How much hard work are we talking about here? Did anybody look at that?
Running water, electricity and all that, but the average woman spends 70% of her time carrying water.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. So important for the animals, important for the humans, important for everything that they're doing, right? And so we see here, at least in this time, and really I think what you're saying is even until very recently, it was the woman's work to get the water. How much water, though, are we talking about that she would have shown that she was hardworking to Abraham's servant? Okay. How many camels were there? 10. 10 camels, right? So I read somewhere between like 20 to 35 gallons of water a camel might drink after a long journey. 20 times 10, 200 gallons. Mark, how many gallons did we heave yesterday? About 10, right? Over 4 of us. And how tired were we? Pretty tired, right? If Abimelech's servant was coming, would we have been hired? Probably not, right? But so there was a lot. I think I read it was like 1,700 pounds, maybe on the low end. And from what I understand, that she would have walked down into this well. And I think the text even suggests that she went down into the well, would fill her pitcher up and then carry it out, put it into a trough, and then guess what? Do it again. And then you bring it out and then you do it again, right? And so why did Rebekah do that? Because she saw the silver and gold bracelets? Because she saw the wad of cash in the servant's back pocket? No. Yeah. She just saw that there was a need. She saw that need, and what did she do? She helped. She fulfilled that need, right? A lot of times we just kind of sit back and we say, somebody else will do that. Or, I kind of put my blinders on and say, well, good luck to you or whatever. But she saw that there was a need. Nobody told her this, right? She just offered this. She saw that. I think that's a definite characteristic that we see out of Rebekah. Good. What else? That's right. But what did he tell himself before that? Yeah, let the woman who not only gives me a drink, but then also offers to water the camels. This is the type of woman that I'm looking for my master's son. This is the type of woman that's going to be important for her, for Isaac. Okay.
Had to give water to Hurst.
Okay, the custom would have been just to...
Yeah, so she went above and beyond.
Yeah, we might call that going the extra mile, right? So she went above and beyond that. She went the extra mile. And so what motivations might have driven Rebekah to do this? We see why, the result of it, but why did she do that? Okay. Yeah. So maybe she just had an attitude of service, right? She was looking out for strangers, and she knew that they would need help, assistance, and so she served them. Good. What else? Right. Yep. Times 10. Yeah, that's a lot of work. This is more than just one pitcher of water. This is more than just one cup. And he also had an entourage with him too, right? I mean, I would assume that at least there were 10 of them, 10 men. There may have been more, I don't know, but there would have been those as well. Okay, good. What other motivations would Rebekah have had?
She probably knew stories about Abraham and how God taught him. But she may have been comforted that these people serve God too.
Yeah. So she's a God-fearing person, and because of that, she's going to treat other people the way she wants to be treated. Good. I like that. And I think that's one of the things why Abraham sent his servant back to his homeland, as he was looking for other God-fearing people. And so why then did he want somebody from his homeland? Because he was looking for people that were God-fearing, right? So why, let's go back to the question. I kind of got off track there a little bit. What drove Rebekah to agree to leave her home, marry Isaac, and move away from the area? What might have been some motivations that Rebekah had to leave her home and marry Isaac?
Well, she probably good, probably heard of God, and this is something that God wanted her to do.
Okay, so maybe she knew that this was something that God wanted in her life, that because they're relatives, that maybe there was some safety in that. Okay, good. What else? Okay, so maybe she wanted a home of her own, maybe to move into her own family atmosphere. Good. Mm-hmm.
Science they had seen, they heard, what they have, what we're doing here. Evidently, if they fear God or realize the standards, and they know that Abraham was, they know Abraham was a doctor. So, and it's his son. That's kind of what you want your daughter and son to be having in church or married.
That's right. Was Rebekah decisive in her decision, or was she wishy-washy? She was decisive, right? She was asked, right? The family wanted to stay and do their goodbyes or whatever, and she was decisive and said, "I will go," right, Tom? Well, just the fact that they would have known who Abraham was, and to know that he was a man of God. I think that's what we're saying.
He says to the men, they're blessed of the Lord. Serve.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty prevalent in that, even where Abraham moves to, even though we're saying that those are not the type of people that God wants, they still know who God is. I mean, we see that through the interaction with Abraham and Pharaoh and Abimelech, and then now Isaac and Abimelech as well. Mark, and then...
In verse 50, Laban and Bethuel answered and said, "The thing has come from the Lord, we cannot speak to the bad." So there was some association.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Patricia? 24:60.
The lady said that bless Rebekah and say unto thee, thou art our sister, we are the mother of thousands of people. So I wonder if they know the promise from Abraham that the descendants will be like, or is that
Yeah.
say everybody that thousands of years?
Right. Did they know the prophecy, or was this just something that they said to everybody? It's hard to know for sure, but they wanted the best for Rebekah, right? Okay.
You send your servant to get a wife for your son. I think you could do that. She didn't ask you, well, what size does it look like? How tall is he? Good looking man? Is his blood or what? Don't ask those questions. That was the culture of that day. But today, we don't have that culture here.
That's right.
And you have to have some faith. And so evidently, the God of people, they had to put the faith in God. It's the same as the right thing to do.
Yeah, so working that in as well, what characteristics was Abraham's servant looking for in a wife for Isaac? Was it beauty? Was that top on the list? Was it fame or prestige or power or family situation? No, it wasn't those things, right? What kind of qualities was Abimelech looking for? Not Abimelech, Abraham's servant. That she was loyal, going the extra mile, being that servant. We've talked about some of those characteristics. So it was the qualities that really matter, that are important to this family situation. I think that's the thing that we get out of that. And I think that's what we see in Rebekah. What did Abraham's servant do? And this is kind of a hard question. And I'm really going to kind of look at what Abraham's servant didn't do. So remember at the beginning of the story, Abraham says, what does he tell his servant? I think that just relates to an oath that they're making, a vow. I mean, it was a serious thing that they were entering into, agreeing to do. That Abraham wanted to make sure that this was carried out, right? What one main thing did Abraham want to not happen? Okay, marry a Canaanite, and for him not to go back, right? He didn't want Isaac to go back to the homeland, right? He wanted him to stay there. Now it's interesting, we find out that Jacob does go back later on, the next generation, but Isaac, they want him to stay there. Okay, so what does Abraham want his servant to do? Talked about that he wanted, this was a very solemn thing, a vow, or maybe even a covenant. What did he want his servant to do? Okay. So the first thing that he wants him to do is to go, right? Can we say that? We can all agree that he wants him to go. Did Abraham's servant go? I mean, I think we can see some things in that. How often do we get up and say, tomorrow? Or, I'm not going to do that thing because really it's not really important, right? Kevin, it's not important enough, even though I've made this solemn vow, even though I've said these words, really, it's not that big a deal, right? I can do whatever I want to. But that's not the way that Abraham's servant looked at it. And so I think what we see is that Abraham's servant, he didn't just stay in Canaan. I mean, I think we can get caught up into that in our society, right? We can say, well, let me just get on my phone and I'll look that information up. I don't need to study, or I don't need to read about what situation was going on or whatever. I can just kind of, glance at a few words and I'll be good. Did Abraham's servant pray? Yes. Why do I have up here, he didn't just pray? Yeah. Let's see if we can answer that question. Why didn't he didn't just pray? What do we mean by that? He went ahead and went? Okay, but why didn't he just pray and say, God, produce a wife for Isaac? Okay. I did not, no. Okay, but we're going to talk about that as well. It was a long trip, right?
Typically, an aspect of God expects of us is that, we can certainly take our cares and concerns and all to God, but it's not a matter of God allowing us to just be able to sit back and say, okay, God, bring it on. Here's what I've asked for. I'm just going to sit back and wait. He still kind of expects us to do what we can.
Yeah.
And of course, like saying, I'm praying God give me a really good job, and I'm not putting in any applications, I'm not interviewing, and all of a sudden it's just going to show up. So, he didn't just pray. He had to take some action in doing what he did.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. So it does take action on our part, right? It takes God's part doing that, but it takes action on our part. When James says that that we need to pray for count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet various trials, why do we need trials? Remember? For growth, right? And what brings that on? It's those trials, right? And so it is, what we're talking about here is action. And so I think what we see out of Abraham's servant is we see action on his part. And so he didn't expect God to do everything, and so he was doing his part in that as well. But what he did do is he went to Haran. He found other God-fearing people. He identified this criteria or these characteristics in the right type of wife for Rebekah that he was looking for. And then he also was prepared to fail, right? John, you said that he went on a long journey. He's already talked to his master about this, and so he goes on this long journey. It's going to be a long journey back. Is this servant ready to fail? He's prepared to fail. I disagree with you on that because he's made plans to prepare to fail, right, John? Okay. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it'd be arduous, wouldn't it? So why would this servant be prepared to fail? Well, first of all, is he prepared to fail? Your oath is absolved, right? So I think he is prepared to fail. Why would that be something that his servant did? How is he prepared to fail? What does that mean? What does it look like?
Situation where those circumstances, I'm supposed to fail in this, and I've got to find somebody who might kind of fudge maybe some of the requirements that I've kind of been told to just bring back something.
You just bring back any quality of woman for his wife, right? How many of you ever produced a widget? Not a literal widget, but you produce some widgets. I know you have. Is it acceptable? Mark, you're working on that wrecker out there. Comes out with 7 wheels on it. What's your boss going to say? Mark, what are you thinking? What is going on? This is not okay, right? Those snack cakes, right? It's got the print on coming over onto the side, right? They're going to say, get that. We can't sell that. We're not going to deal with that. We're not going to deal with a woman that is not acceptable to Isaac. That's not the qualities or characteristics that we're looking for. Tommy?
Even in the servant's prayer, he says, I know that you are going to show kindness to my master. He knows that God is going to come through. And that was the problem when the disciples went to try and heal the centurion's daughter. They couldn't, and Jesus had to had to come healer because their faith wasn't strong enough. And I think there was some kind of correlation between these two stories of the servant knew that God was going to help them, that he was going to be there for them. He was going to keep the word and help them.
Yeah, tell me which event that was again? Healing over. Oh,
The disciples, the centurion,
okay, yeah. And the centurion said, "You don't even have to come into my house. Just say the word, and I'll know that my servant's daughter, I think it was, would be healed." And so he exhibited great faith, knowing that he could be healed even over, not having to be there with him. Right.
However, there's obviously we know the story, okay, but it's just like any other situation. To say he may have made this long trip up there, and he may not have found the right person because it may not have been God's time. He could have come back and then may have been sent again, and then lo and behold, here it is, the woman that meets the criteria. So
Right.
again, I don't think there was ever any indication that they thought God was going to fail them. It was just, it was going to be in God's plan. Turns out, yes, it was his first trip through it, so on and so on.
Right. Yeah, and I agree, and that's kind of where I was going with that too. It wasn't that they were thinking God was going to fail, but was the servant going to fail, or was the woman going to fail in finding the right criteria? And I think I've used this slide in the past. We're kind of backing up a little bit in our material there, just to think about this. But in terms of worry and anxiety, going along with this action plan, right? We're doing things. That's why I wanted to look at this Abraham's servant. He was a man of action, I would say. Rebekah was a woman of action. She did things. She was willing to go. She was decisive in that. How many times do we say, well, I don't know, can I go with this man or can I not? And you're just all over the place. But she was decisive in that. She made sure that she had a good plan so that she was safe and she was protected. She had an idea of where she was going and those kind of things. But I think too many times we get caught up in this do nothing plan. Do nothing is the fertilizer for anxiety, right? And the last point there is work as it is up to you, but pray as if it is up to God. And I think that's what this servant does, right? He prays to God. He's talking to Abraham. They're making the plan. They're doing the parts that they need to do, but they're also incorporating God into that. And I hope that is helpful. I've used this slide in the past, and I hope you agree with that as well. Tommy? 6.
They set the feet of whoever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Give me food. And then the food doesn't come the next day, so they pray again. The next day they pray again, and after a while they're praying and the idol is doing nothing. There's probably a little bit of worry there. Well, what if my idol doesn't actually do anything? So Jesus says, trust God. God does stuff. He is going to do whatever you need. He's going to take care of you. You clearly see that here in chapter 24. And what a crazy story. Who's just going to go out and expect some woman to feed or bring your camels, and then you're going to marry her
Right.
because of that? What a crazy story. God takes care, even through what we consider crazy. He takes care of his people.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's trust and faith all over this story, right? And what does that tell us? When we have these crazy things going on in our lives, what do? Do we do nothing? Do we say, well, God, I'm giving this all to you and I'm not going to have a part in this? Is that what we do? No. We take action, right? If we've got a financial problem, what do? We pray about it. We talk to people about it. We get out and we work, right? We find a solution to that. We're looking for a new job. Do we just say, I'm going to get a job? No. I mean, that's part of it. But we put our resume out there, right? We network. We do those things. So it's a plan of action. It's doing. I think that's the point. but we have trust and faith in God that He's going to provide for us and protect us. God gives us a church family so that we have that fail-safe, right? When we do hit those rock bottom problems where it's financial or emotional or spiritual, we have our family that we can rely on, right? We reach out to them and they can help and support us. Good. Okay. How did Abraham's servant bless God? This is a question I didn't really send to you. But can we bless God? Right, we hear today, right, somebody sneezes, we say, God bless you. Does God bless us? Yes. Who in this story has been blessed by God? Abraham, Isaac, the servant, Rebekah, Laban. What? All parties, it seems like. In some sense, all have been blessed, right? In a general sense, all have been blessed. Okay, good. So, how does Abraham's servant bless God? In verse 24, 27, blessed be the Lord. And then in verse 48, it says that his servant blessed the Lord. How did he do that? What does it mean to bless the Lord? Yeah. So how do we specifically bless the Lord when we partake of the Lord's Supper? We give thanks for it, right? It's not that we call on God to bless it, right? What are we doing when we bless the Lord in partaking of the Lord's Supper? How do we do that? We recognize the sacrifice that was given on our behalf. We recognize that propitiation, right? Okay, good. What else?
You do what God's asked you to do, you bless Him, because that's what you're spreading His word, you're trying to connect to other people, also you come out of the world and you want to share all those things are a blessing to God.
Yeah. You're living the kind of life that God wants you to live, right? You're doing the things that God wants you to do. And so in that sense, when God sees you doing that, what's God's state? Pleased. He's happy, right? Is God not pleased and happy when He sees us doing those things? Was Abraham's servant not pleased? Was God not pleased with Abraham's servant? Absolutely. Because he was doing what? His will? Specifically, what was he doing? Okay, these promises, God has given these promises to Abraham, right? How is that going to be accomplished? But it takes those actual individuals doing that, right? God has said this is what's going to happen. You need to have faith and trust and hope in these things, but then what? You need to get busy, right? You need to get busy doing these things. And that's what Abraham's servant was doing. And so in that sense, he was blessing God. And so I think to bless means to give somebody happiness. In this case, we're giving God happiness. Blessing God essentially means to honor, to praise, to show gratitude for His goodness and His greatness. And so I think we talked about that in terms of the Lord's Supper. We give thanks. We say, God, we thank you for that sacrifice, right? We live our lives in such a way that is reflective upon the sacrifice that was made for us. And so we try to live up to those things. That's the way that we do that with the Lord's Supper. And I think some of those are good there that we were looking at, but we can praise and worship Him, Psalm 103. We can be obedient to Him, John 14. If you love me, you will keep my commandments, right? It's so easy to say that it's just easy for me to do the commandments that I think I want to do, right? Was this easy for Abraham's servant? No, it wasn't easy for him to leave, go this journey, and then come back, right, John? Mm-hmm.
He consecrated that,
Mm-hmm.
set it aside, and that's one term there. But blessing is always wishing good or goodwill will come out.
Yeah.
If I say, if Lord bless your trip and where you're going, you know, we're going to have a good trip, food going, take care of, and have a safe trip.
Yeah. All those things that are needful for that. Good. Number 3, we can have this idea of thankfulness, thanksgiving. We can show our thankfulness to him for the things he's done. And then the last one, kind of tying in with our yearly theme here, serving others is a way that we can bless the Lord. Good.
Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us. And then he goes forward to tell how he blessed us in Christ.
Yeah.
There's the example for us.
Right. Good. He's blessed us with every spiritual blessing. Good. Question 3, how does Rebekah's willingness to water the camels, I think we've talked about this, what are some of the characteristics? I think we've talked about most of those. Was she doing these things as an expectation of a reward? And then maybe switching gears a little bit to Laban. Did she expect to get rewarded for what she did? It does not seem that way. I think that was the very purpose of the experiment that Abraham's servant was bringing about. Was it's expected that the people will get a cup of water, but it's not expected. It's not required that they would also get their camels watered, and so it doesn't appear that way. What about Laban, though? What is his motivation? Well, verse 30 says, as soon as he saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's arms. Seems like there's a change in Laban there. It just seems like, oh, wait a minute. These are rich people. These are powerful people. These are influential people. These are people that can make a change in my life. There's something that I can get out of this. But that doesn't ring true with Rebekah. But can we say that because of the influence of Laban that maybe Rebekah is not the best, or she might also have these characteristics? Could we say that? Okay.
Servant and found out he was Abraham's servant. Laban knew who Abraham was.
Mm-hmm.
Family. So it may not be wealth, it's just that it's a man of traditions and let's see what he wants.
Right.
Maybe Abraham citizens.
Right. This is the right type of person for my sister to move across the country to go be a wife for another man. I don't see the fact that that these characteristics didn't necessarily rub off on Rebekah. We got that was the first bell, so just a couple minutes. We may touch on this a little bit, and then we'll think about it more on Wednesday. What was Rebekah's role in continuing the lineage of Christ? In Genesis 25, this is early on, right? Early on, how early is this in Genesis 25, 22? She's pregnant, right? This is very early on. And she says, these two children are having a fight inside of my belly, right? And so she goes to inquire of the Lord. The children struggled together within her, and she said, if this is thus, why is this happening to me? So she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. Is she the only one that knows this? I would think so. I don't think we have any specific thing written down that I recall reading about. But it seems like that would be something that you would talk to your husband about, that they would both know. So she knows early on that the older will serve the younger, right? That these two in her are struggling. They're going to be this challenge with her. And so she knows this. And so later on, when we get to the story of deceiving Isaac, you know, what's going on there? So who wants to recap that? Okay, second bell. Saved by the second bell. So on Wednesday, be ready to kind of recap the story a little bit for me. Be thinking about, is Rebekah, is she wrong in what she does with Isaac? Or what is her role in continuing the lineage of Christ, as we've asked? That's really kind of the question that I want us to think of on Wednesday. Appreciate your thoughts and comments this morning. We'll have a brief intermission, and then at 15 after, we'll begin our worship. Thank you all very much.